I'm hoping that my mommy might come back anytime soon because I'm really missing her.
If that doesn't grab at your heartstrings, I don't know what will. That little girl is waiting for her mother to come home. So is her teenage brother. But this is a case that has some indicators that something very seriously wrong has happened. And outside of that, we have law enforcement making a unique call for help, trying to reach out to someone that may have tried to help them already. We're going to dive into all that and more. It's time to turn on the searchlight for Dorothy McCathran. Welcome back to Brain Scratch Searchlight. I'm John Lorden. Thank you for joining me here today, and thanks for caring about these cases like I do. This is one of those stories that I feel like we've been on a trend of this year when it comes to Searchlight cases. A woman seemingly walks off into the wilderness and just disappears. But there's some unique circumstances around this, and of course, a lot of suspicion with this one as well. Let's go ahead and start at NamUs and jump into the details about Dorothy Allen McCathran. I think there's a typo here in terms of her name. Everywhere else I'm seeing Dorothy. It's spelled like you would expect it to be. She does also go by the nickname of Dottie. She is a white Caucasian female. Date of last contact, January 21st, 2020. And I know it's been a while, but that puts this disappearance right before the pandemic. And we know how the world changed around that. Did that impact this case? I think it'd be hard not to think that it did in some way, but there was still, 6 to 8 weeks before the pandemic really hit. And of course, in that first 6 to 8 weeks is when you're really going to get most of law enforcement's attention for a missing persons case anyway. There are searches that happened. We'll get into those details. Missing from Vivian, Louisiana. We'll learn more about Vivian in just a moment. Standing between 5 feet 2 inches tall and 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing around 110 to 120 pounds. Circumstances of disappearance. Dorothy Allen Yates-McCathran, 40 years old, was reported missing by her family. She was last seen at her residence in the 10,000 block of Vivian Airport Road. And that's about it. A little more details, but they're just repeating the vital stats that we've already covered here. Not a whole lot of detail there, but thankfully there is a lot more detail to get to, including from someone I have a lot of respect for, a friend of the channel that we'll get to. Hair color brown, eye color also brown. Piercing in her ears. They're noticing scars on her abdomen and both arms. No real details about what types of scars those are. And also, we have mention of a tattoo on her abdomen, but no description of the tattoo. I haven't run into any pictures of it as well. Clothing and accessories, no information entered. And keep that one in mind because her significant other is one of the last people to have seen her. And I'm just curious why we don't have those types of details when we have that case. But he wasn't alone. We actually have two people that saw her right before she disappeared. So why we don't have clothing or accessories information, I'm not sure. Transportation, she did not have her own car. She had a car that she shared with her husband. The car was disabled at the time and it was left at home. So she did not take the vehicle. If she did leave their property, she either did it on foot or she got picked up. In terms of images and documents, they just have several different pictures of her here. Of course, we'll be running those on the scroller right below me as we continue through today. But let's learn about where this is happening. Vivian is a town in Caddo Parish, Louisiana. Population was 3,671 as of the 2010 census. It is the fourth largest municipality in Caddo Parish. Vivian is in northwestern Caddo Parish. Louisiana Highway 1 passes through the center of the town, leading north 11 miles to the Texas border at the northwest corner of Louisiana and south 30 miles to Shreveport. So very close to the Texas border, and there's not a lot of solid information to try to pull the search into Texas, but I am finding some comments in terms of social media and another interesting thing that we're going to be looking at that might suggest travel in that direction or possibly even into Texas. But let's take a look. This is around the area where her and her husband's property is. They were married for 6 to 7 years. Reports are kind of varying on that a little bit. Of course, the little girl that you saw at the start of this is their daughter. She also has a son from a different relationship. But we can see here that there is just not a lot going on in this area in terms of potential for witnesses. I mean, we do have kind of the town area over here. We've got neighborhoods, but there is a lot of woods, a lot of brush all around this, and just an immense search area. Continuing at the Charlie Project, let's pick up a few more details from our friend Megan over there. On January 21st, 2020, she spoke to a friend on the phone that day, upset and crying, and said she and her husband of 7 years had been fighting and she needed to get away. She said she wanted to take a restaurant job that her friend had offered her. During the conversation, someone walked in, and although Yates-McCathran had been crying, she said hello to that person in a normal tone of voice. Now, this to me is a pretty important detail. From what I understand, this is something that Dorothy's mother came to learn a little bit after the missing persons thing had actually kicked off. I think it might have been even a year or two after that. But to me, it's an important fact because, look, we're looking at one of those conversations where it's like, okay, supposedly there was an argument going on between a couple. One of them supposedly walked off. We've never seen them again. Sounds like it could be a domestic violence related situation. What's grabbing me here is the thought about, where is Dorothy when this phone call is happening? Is she at home or is she somewhere out in public? It might make sense that if she was somewhere out in public, even if she thought she was semi-private, if she was sitting at a park or something like that, that someone might have approached her and maybe she kind of would have stiffened up a little bit and, kind of hid the emotions and just said hello in a normal tone. But the other possibility is that she was home. And if she was home, then that's also curious. If this was the husband that she was super upset with and talking to someone about leaving, would that have really been the reaction? Doesn't quite seem right as well. So this whole interaction for me is just a huge question mark with this case. It feels like it's very important, but I can tell you that's all that we're going to learn about it. And there's just not a whole lot of additional detail around it. At the time of her disappearance, her vehicle was disabled. Authorities believe she either walked away from home or got picked up by someone else. Let's check out the Shreveport Times, dive into some of their articles for more details here. Since her disappearance, flyers of the missing woman have been placed around stores and places she frequented in the Vivian area. The Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office confirmed that a drone was used in a search since she was reported missing, but said deputies did not see anything. And this is another one of those cases where she would go missing and it wouldn't be reported for a few days. In this instance, it's kind of for good reason. She had been known to go missing for a couple days at a time. This relationship was not very solid. We're hearing from her family that there was elements of abuse that she was dealing with around this. So even her husband notifying her parents that she was missing, there was like a 1-day gap on that. And then even when they hear that, it's kind of like, well, we know that she's done this before. We're going to wait a little bit. Law enforcement does kind of do a little check-in, but things really don't kick off until several days after she went missing. But when they do kick off, they start pulling in the right resources. They know that they're dealing with woods in a wooded area like that, so they send up a drone. We're going to see they also bring out canines. We just want her to come home. We want to hear from her. We want to know that she's okay, said Martha Mullins, her mother. Mullins described her daughter as being crafty, outgoing, and has lots of friends and a contagious laugh. There's a lot that we're going to learn from this episode, and I would be completely remiss to not give credit to the Vanished podcast. Marissa Jones doing the excellent work there, and her team doing the excellent work that they've done for years. And if you are not familiar with the Vanished podcast, please change that today. Check out this episode in particular. Start with this episode, and I guarantee you'll get pulled into more. The Vanished podcast to me is it's a podcast for people that are a little more into true crime than just for the entertainment factor. People that really want a deep level of detail. They want to hear every specific little piece so they can come to their own conclusion about how they feel about the situation. And Marissa has done a fantastic job on this episode as always. She interviews a bunch of different people, including Dorothy's mom and her brother Brandon as well. So just to share a little bit more on the personal side of Dorothy, Dorothy and her brother Brandon were both adopted. Her mom says that Dorothy was pretty much a mama's girl. She also played soccer and softball. She was a JV cheerleader. Her brother says that she was the life of the party and popular, a smart girl who would get straight A's. After high school, she went to Baylor. She majored in interior design, and she was almost done with that when her family got a call from a friend of hers saying that Dorothy was having some trouble and needed help. Effectively, she had a medical issue going on, and she started taking hydrocodone for that, and she got addicted to it. And that kind of led her down a path of drug use, and not just prescription drugs, unfortunately. Her family tried to bring her home. They tried to help her in numerous ways. She winds up going to 10 different rehab centers, but nothing is really seeming to stick around this. She meets a man named Kevin, and her mother just refers to it as a horrible relationship. She gets pregnant, but it's an abusive relationship, and at that time, both of them are using drugs, which I think he would even agree with. I believe his story now is that he's all cleaned up. Another good reason to listen to Vanished. They're the only ones that could get him to talk, and that's all I'm going to share about it, because I really think you need to hear it directly from him, especially if you're trying to evaluate the possibility that he's involved in this in some way. So I'm going to dip back over to these notes every now and then, but once again, just a huge thank you to Marissa. Just, we wouldn't have enough to cover this case if it wasn't for the work that Vanish did here, because as you're going to see, there's a little bit of local press around this, and then that's about it. There's just not a whole lot more. But continuing with the local press, they do note that after the drone search, the law enforcement teams get back out there. They do bring canines as well. I learned from Vanished that included cadaver canines. Caddo deputies were back searching several acres near the home of a missing woman, said Sheriff Steve Prater. And I believe the property, it's weird, I'm hearing two different sizes for it. I'm hearing 5 acres, but then I said I wasn't going to talk about it, and I'm going to give you another detail. But one detail that her husband shared on the Vanish podcast, he said 23 acres, I believe. I don't know if he's talking about just the size of the wooded area around where they are. So Monday, they were joined by the Shreveport Fire Department Canine Search and Rescue Task Force, ARCA Latex Canine Search and Rescue Team, and Canine Spirit. A second aerial search was also conducted. The search included a 30-acre area that was separated into grids. So they went very far and wide around this. And you can see the map looks pretty much like what we were looking at. And they were looking in that heavily forested area, at least in this particular snapshot, kind of south. Or actually, they got the map upside down. Airport Road is upside down here. So that would be north of the road. Yeah, up here effectively. So unfortunately, and obviously, she was not found. But there were some items that were found, including a feather boa, which is actually not confirmed to be hers, but also a knit cap, a watch, and jewelry. And the jewelry, watch, and knit cap were definitely hers. But in particular, her mother recognized the jewelry because it was jewelry that she had given her. And that stuff was found about 300 to 400 feet from the house. On top of all that, Kevin would later say that he found a phone hidden under the porch. Investigators wanted that phone, and they also wanted his phone because she didn't have her own phone. She would effectively use his. He said, okay, we'll come and get it. For some reason, the investigators didn't come get it. Maybe it was because the COVID stuff had kicked on. He eventually got the phones to her mother, and her mother turned them over. But law enforcement said, look, both these phones are so badly damaged, we can't get anything from them. So that's really it in terms of physical evidence. But if you recall, I mentioned that police had a strange call out, and that's related to something that I'm not sure if it's evidence or not. But here at caddosheriff.org, we see a post from May 13th, 2020. So we're talking about 4 months later. Caddo Sheriff's detectives are hoping to connect with a person who left information pertaining to Dorothy Yates-McCathran's disappearance, I believe they mean, at a Vivian business in April. Detectives aren't saying what information was left at the business, but they would like to find the person to speak with them further. She left behind her vehicle, her cell phone, her purse, but most importantly, she left behind 2 children. Obviously, a very important factor there. Now, I believe that I found a picture of what was left that kind of grabbed their attention, and it's this. Now, on vanished, her mother details that this was left by a credit card machine at an Exxon gas station in the area. But not just the fact that it's an article about her daughter, it's really the writing on it that captures their attention, because it seems to be describing locations. As a matter of fact, this top section, I don't know if it's a picture of an area or if it's a map. It's literally written up above it, looks like car wash location. And when I look at a picture of it, it does remind me of like one of those do-it-yourself car washes. I have heard a couple of references to a car wash being in that area, but then there's a mention of North Atlanta, Texas, maybe. North Atlanta, Texas, maybe. So just kind of doing a quick search on that from Vivian. It's about 22 miles away. And what I'm just curious about the statement about maybe. What could that possibly mean? Also, yeah, that's across the border. So that's the first of the locations that comes up as Texas. There was also mention of another area, this place, Karnak, but that I only saw on a Reddit post. And I'm sure at this point, this family has heard all kinds of different theories on where she could possibly be. And I don't want to lean into it too much. This one is more interesting because we had law enforcement kind of asking about this information. But it's just, I don't know what that phrasing, North Atlanta, Texas, maybe. Adjacent grassy field. That's all I saw this day. Why 2 different locations? So the phrasing on this has me a bit confused. I'm not certain that this is someone that actually has information that is stuff that is factual. And as a matter of fact, I saw someone else that commented, this was posted at the Find Dorothy Yates-McCathran Facebook page. Someone else wrote psychic maybe, and that's kind of standing out to me because of this phrasing. It does almost sound like notes about a psychic, and the fact that there's a drawing at the top of it as well. Like, is this someone that had a vision and they're trying to portray what that vision is? Looks like car wash location, North Atlanta, Texas, maybe adjacent grassy field. That's all I saw this day. Why 2 different locations? So I don't know if this is a car wash in Atlanta, Texas, and it adjacent from that is a grassy field. I mean, I'm taking it very literally here, and it's weird because the way these statements are written, it's almost like the person that wrote this stuff is questioning it themselves. So my feeling is possibly this might have been someone that thought they had some kind of psych vision. They wanted to relay that information in some way they thought was helpful. This is how they decided to do it. They left it in the Exxon. And apparently they did try to use the surveillance footage to track down who the person was. For some reason, that didn't work. I don't have an exact reason on that, but it's way too often that we hear that for one reason or another, the cameras weren't working. I don't know if that was the case here, but pretty soon we get to the first birthday without Dorothy. Missing Vivian woman's family spends her birthday in search of answers. And here we have a picture of her mother and, of course, her daughter, Emma Jo. It would have been her 41st birthday in October of 2020. Family and friends have pulled together a $20,000 reward. Let's get some details here about the disappearance. She was cooking dinner, her mother says. There's food on the stove where she was cutting up okra and cooking okra. And then when her husband got home, she was gone. Her purse was there, her driver's license, everything, and she was missing. A search of the 5-acre property near Vivian's airport where the couple lived did turn up some of her belongings. They found jewelry, they found a hat and a scarf in the woods, but that's all that was found, her mother said. She says that she talked to her daughter on the phone the day before she disappeared, Mullins said McCathran was upset about not being able to come to Shreveport to see her daughter on her 6th birthday. She cried some on the phone, her mother said. But then she settled down and got excited about coming for the birthday party the following Saturday, and she was going to come to do a camp with Emma Jo the next morning. She was very excited, and then the next day she's gone. McCathran's mother and stepfather have custody of Dorothy's 2 children. So obviously there's a little more to the story, and once again, thanks to Vanished, we can actually fill in the gaps there a little bit. So the Department of Family Services gets involved. Basically, Dorothy has an injury that happens to her while she's pregnant. They're having trouble getting her, and it's late term in her pregnancy. They're having trouble getting her blood pressure under control, and they send her in, and the next day her daughter is born. I think because of the type of injury and knowing how it happened, that brought in the Department of Family Services. They basically asked Dorothy's mother and Dorothy's stepfather to take care of the 2 kids, I think, while they start doing their investigation. So they start investigating. I think this is a little bit of a scare to Dorothy and her husband. So there's some effort for them to get cleaned up. They're trying to make things look good so they can get the children back. But apparently that effort was pretty short-lived. Dorothy and Kevin would get married even, but the relationship still toxic. There's still drug use. Like I mentioned earlier, he says it's her primarily using the drugs. Dorothy would go through periods of running off, but they would always wind up back together. Eventually, her mother and stepfather got full custody of the children, but Dorothy and Kevin had rights to supervised visitation. Now, the thing about Dorothy being upset about not being able to see her daughter, we keep hearing the car's disabled, the car's disabled. Well, on Vanished, it's revealed that the car was not broken, it was intentionally disabled by Kevin. So it was literally his choice to have the car in that state instead of, he could have turned it back on. I don't know if he was just doing something as simple as, unplugging the battery, but somehow he had disabled the vehicle. He could have re-enabled it, and then Dorothy would have been able to go and see their daughter on her birthday. So just another twist in all this. Kevin was supposedly helping her get clean, but he noticed that she was getting paranoid, and he suspected that she was still using drugs. The day before she disappeared, he said that she had actually been in town. She scored drugs. This is supported by another witness as well. She saw police nearby, and she panicked. She thought that she might get picked up, so she swallowed all the meth that she had bought all in one shot. And apparently that led to a very rough night back at the home. She would sleep late into the next day, and then she started making dinner. He went to town, and I'm hearing different explanations on this. Either he went to town with a friend, or that friend is actually his cousin. I think even the Vanish podcast kind of presents it both ways. But they were looking at a potential job somewhere. He's gone for either 1 or possibly 2 hours. He comes back, and she's gone. House is filled with smoke. He comes in, and a TV remote was found that had been partially melted on a wood stove. Inside the wood stove, there was plastic and other stuff burning that shouldn't be in that type of stove. There were clothes scattered all around the house. So it seemed like a bit of a scene. And of course, as I mentioned before, he waited a day before contacting her family because he's saying that this wasn't completely out of the realm of what would happen in their relationship. And there was even a previous instance that was noted by a police report where she had kind of run off into the woods, and then I think she was found a mile or maybe a mile and a half away sleeping on a neighbor's property. So her family eventually finds out. They do contact the sheriff, and the sheriff does a check-in. And this is just one little quick note that they mentioned in the Vanish podcast. When the sheriff did the check-in, he noticed that there was blood in the bathroom. And that's kind of the last that we hear about that detail. Again, we know that she didn't have a phone with her. She would use his phone that was left behind. And her family has heard that she made comments to some people. Of course, once they get the Facebook page up, they start hearing all this stuff. And some of the comments that they're being told is, well, she said that if something happens to me, that Kevin did it. Her brother Brandon would also hear that Kevin was approached about taking a lie detector test. He initially agrees to it, but then right before it happens, he backs out. Now, Dorothy's mother also does point out that, look, Kevin has an alibi for this time frame, but basically that alibi is coming from relatives. Not only is it his cousin, that's this supposed friend, who did see her. He apparently, when he came to pick up Kevin, saw her and she was getting dinner ready, cooking okra. But the job that they were going to scope was actually at his aunt's house. So we have a family member that is part of this witnessing the last moment that she was in the house seen by somebody. Then another family member that's like, oh yeah, they were over here because they were looking, I think it was some concrete work or something that they were going to do there. So her mother kind of questions, the reliability of that information, and maybe for very good reason. Now I know we've been talking a lot about Kevin. Here is a photo of Kevin. Continuing at usnews.com, Kevin McCathran came home to find his wife missing. Dottie's husband of 7 years, Kevin McCathran, told law enforcement and Dottie's family that he went to work January 21st, and when he returned, Dottie was nowhere to be found. In recent months, Martha Mullins has received new details in the case. So this is where we're going to get into the phone call information. And yeah, this is 2022, basically, when her mother starts hearing about this phone call. Now, that person has asked not to be named. And how reliable is this information about the phone call? She's hearing about it a few years later. The friend told Dottie's mother that on January 21st at 3:45 p.m., the missing woman had called her. And I'm pointing that out because there's another aspect to this case that is just nagging at me a little bit. And that is, for a missing persons investigation, usually we have pretty rigid time frames, especially time of last seen. And in this case, even the NamUs profile, she was reported missing by her family, last seen at her residence on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. There's nothing for time. And in most of this coverage, there isn't. That's a little interesting to me because we have this aspect of her husband saying, well, no, I was going to scope out this job with my friend or cousin, whatever. But we have nothing for time frames to try to even understand if that works with the story. Curious that, his story is that she was getting dinner ready when he saw her. I have to assume that this phone call that she's having, I don't know if this would have been after he left, or if he came back after this, but I don't think this is the type of conversation she's going to have while he's still at home. I guess, if it's 5 acres of property, if he's out on the property somewhere, maybe he comes walking back in. Maybe that's the, oh, hello, moment. I'm not sure. But basically, they're pointing out all the same details I already shared with you, that she was asking about that job at the restaurant and she had been crying. But when whoever walked in, she pulled herself together and just said hi. Dottie continued the conversation with the woman on the phone after the unknown individual walked in. He was the last person that saw her alive, her mother said. She gave that information over to detectives, but we don't know if anything came of it. Sheriff's Detective Matt Purgerson said that in the 2-year anniversary press release, an investigation by the Caddo Sheriff's Office has turned up no significant leads. And it looks like the family kept raising money because in this article, they're saying that the reward is up to $30,000. Shreveport Times reached out to Kevin for comment, but did not receive any response. And from everything I've seen, he has only spoken to the Vanished podcast. Over at caddosheriff.org, 2025 in January seems like another little push. There's really no new details, but the sheriff's office kind of posts another press release. CPSO is searching for clues regarding a woman's disappearance in 2020. There is just no new information that comes with that. It does help. There's a ripple of articles that kind of kick off with this, but same thing. They're just repeating, the basics of the case. So on top of all that stuff, there was a pretty good section in Vanished where her mom was talking about her thoughts on what could be going on with this case. And of course, we know that drugs are something that Dorothy struggles her whole adult life with. One of those theories is that Dorothy had maybe stolen some drugs. And actually, I think this is a story that came into the family probably through social media or some type of contact like that. Supposedly, this story is Dorothy stole drugs. Kevin took them to hide them from her. So, did the dealer come for her? And it looks like law enforcement might have pressed on that a little bit, because there's also some buzz that there were basically two local dealers in the area, and one of them decided to leave the state because of just being tired of being questioned about this case. So they say. One of the other possibilities her mom discussed, or that is brought up in the podcast, is the possibility that she might have overdosed out in the woods. That maybe, considering the story that we're hearing from Kevin, for her to take a huge dose of meth all in one shot, maybe there was some medical emergency that happened to her when she had run off, or maybe her running off was part of the start of some type of medical emergency, and we just haven't been able to find her yet. Of course, the other possibility is that she legit took off. She could have walked into town. She could have arranged for someone to come and get her. I think there's some ability for that to have occurred when we're talking about the phone call that she had with her friend that day. It seemed like she couldn't be there anymore, that she had to get away. Her history seems to suggest that she would always come back, but her history also suggests that she would make attempts to kind of get away. Looking at this case, over 5 years after the fact, and realizing that she's got two children that have missed out on a significant portion of their childhood with her, I don't know how much I really put into that theory. Her history just seems to speak differently to that. Even her Facebook page, it's so obvious how much she loves her children. I can't imagine that that's the possibility here. And of course, the other possibility is that Kevin did something, but he's hiding it. And I don't know how to weigh that. It's already a tricky enough conversation to try to analyze that and look at that. But when we have such little detail, we don't even have the time frames really locked in. We don't have his alibis really noted anywhere. We don't have anyone's comments. None of these newspapers could either get in touch with or tried to get in touch with these people to verify that information. So it's hard to know, is that alibi really trustworthy or not? I think, I would imagine that Marissa takes a lot of time in how she crafts her episodes and chooses what should be in there and what shouldn't. And I don't think it's any accident that the mother raising that point about, hey, it's the family members that give him this alibi, was left in the episode. I do think that that's an important consideration, and it should be with a case of this nature. So, as I mentioned before, the only people that could get this man to speak, the Vanish team. So if you want to hear the words from him, you'll have to check the episode out for yourself. And there's a lot more detail he gets into, but I know some people also just like to hear how people are talking about this. Is there any level of victim blaming? Is there anything that calls out to you like, oh, that didn't seem authentic, or that doesn't seem right? You guys can be the judge for that yourself by checking out the episode. Of course, I'll have a link to it in the description box down below. And again, my hat's off to Marissa and her amazing team for really, for what I do here. I try to pull together the available information so that you guys don't have to go searching through 20, 40, 60, 80, sometimes 100 sources to get all of those details. But Marissa takes things a big step further because, she's always filing the Freedom of Information Act request. She's got the legal background to actually be able to get to that information, disseminate that information, and incorporate that information in a very meaningful way. So I can't recommend it enough. I know it's not for everyone. It's a deeper level of true crime, but I think you guys probably already know about it. I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Of course, to show your support, please check out the links down below. You'll also find the page for the Facebook Find Dorothy Yates-McCathran group. Show them some support here. I'm a little concerned because the updates here seem to stop in late 2023. And when I see something like that, it just makes me concerned that the heartbreak is too much for the family, and they're not able to keep up with posting a message on social media every birthday or the anniversary of the disappearance. I hope that's not what's happening here, but I'm worried about it. So maybe a bunch of new people coming and following this page and leaving some kind messages might let them know that people are still thinking and caring and hoping that they're able to bring Dorothy home to this beautiful young girl here, as well as her older brother. So up to a $30,000 reward. You can contact Caddo-Shreveport Crime Stoppers at 318-673-7373. Of course, we've had the phone number on the screen the whole time as well. There is also a healthy thread happening at Web Sleuths about this conversation. It's kind of trailed off a little bit over this year, but it could be time to reinvigorate it. So if you're a Web Sleuths user, please get over there and help keep this conversation going. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone that supports us here at the channel. You might notice we don't jam these videos with a bunch of commercials. There's one at the beginning, and if you're kind enough to stay for the one at the end, that really helps us. But we can't do that without our amazing supporters at PayPal, Patreon, people that buy merchandise. Thank you guys so much. If you'd like to become one of those, please visit lordandarts.com. You can sign up for Patreon there, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee. I really appreciate it because we literally cannot do this without you guys. It's us working together as a team, and it's us trying to help these families in these terrible situations together. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Please join us again next week for a brand new episode of Brain Scratch right here on the Lord and Arts channel.